Hi, I'm Chloe, and my sister destroyed the one thing that made me feel beautiful, then stood there smiling while I cried over the shredded remains. But what she didn't know was that I had been recording everything for months, and her perfect wedding was about to become the most embarrassing public disaster in Riverside, Oregon history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What started as sibling rivalry became a calculated takedown that exposed years of psychological torment, and by the end, the entire town knew exactly who Natalie Parker really was behind her sweet, innocent facade. The spring air in Riverside carried the scent of blooming cherry trees and fresh possibilities. Senior year was winding down, and prom was exactly 3 weeks away. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, holding up the dress that had taken me 8 months to save for. The emerald green fabric caught the afternoon light streaming through my window, creating tiny sparkles that danced across the silk material. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I had worked double shifts at the local coffee shop, saved every birthday dollar from my grandmother, and even sold my old textbooks to afford this dress. It wasn't just any dress. It was the dress. The one I had seen in Bella's bridal boutique window back in September, the one I had dreamed about wearing, while dancing with Tyler Bennett under the Enchanted Garden theme decorations. The bodice was fitted with delicate beading that traced elegant patterns across the chest, and the skirt flowed like water when I moved. It made me feel like someone worth noticing, someone beautiful, someone who belonged. Living in the Parker household meant constantly fighting for attention, for space, for any acknowledgement that I existed as more than just an inconvenience. My older sister Natalie had always been the golden child, homecoming queen, valedictorian, now engaged to Kevin Martinez, the town's most eligible bachelor whose family owned 3 successful restaurants. She was everything our parents wanted in a daughter, poised, popular, and perfectly predictable. Meanwhile, I was the awkward middle child with frizzy hair, thick glasses, and a tendency to say the wrong thing at family dinners. Our younger sister Ashley had learned early to stay, out of the crossfire between Natalie and me. She was only 14, but she had already mastered the art of becoming invisible when tensions rose. I didn't blame her. Self-preservation was a valuable skill in our house. The family business, Parker's Premier Catering, meant our home was constantly buzzing with wedding preparations, menu tastings, and event planning. Natalie had naturally slipped into the role of event coordinator, working alongside our mother Linda to build what they called the family legacy. I, on the other hand, was relegated to washing dishes and setting up chairs. My ideas were dismissed, my suggestions ignored, and my presence barely tolerated during important client meetings. But prom was going to be different. Prom was mine. I had been dating Tyler for 6 months now, ever since he asked me to help him with his chemistry homework, and discovered I wasn't just the quiet girl who sat in the back row. He was kind, funny, and somehow saw past my insecurities to find something worth caring about. When he asked me to prom, I felt like Cinderella finally getting her invitation to the ball. The dress represented everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed about. It was proof that I could create something beautiful for myself, that I didn't need to live in Natalie's shadow forever. I had even booked an appointment at the salon for hair and makeup, something I had never done before. For once, I was going to feel like the princess instead of the servant. I carefully hung the dress back in my closet, making sure it was positioned away from anything that might snag the delicate fabric. Tomorrow was Saturday, and I planned to show Madison, my best friend, how it looked. She had been my cheerleader through the entire dress hunting process, and I couldn't wait to see her reaction. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp spring sunshine that made everything feel possible. I woke up early, actually excited to start the day. Ashley was still sleeping when I padded downstairs to grab some orange juice. The house was unusually quiet. Mom and Dad had gone to check on a wedding venue setup, and Natalie was supposedly meeting with her wedding planner. I decided this was the perfect time for a private fashion show. I carefully retrieved the dress from my closet and laid it across my bed, then spent 20 minutes doing my hair and applying the makeup techniques Madison had taught me. When I finally slipped into the dress and looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The girl staring back at me looked confident, radiant, worthy of being seen. I was taking selfies, practicing my prom poses, when I heard the front door slam. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs, angry footsteps that I recognized immediately. Natalie was home, and from the sound of it, she was in one of her moods. "Chloe!" Her voice cut through the house like a knife. "Where are you?" I quickly tried to unzip the dress, but the zipper caught. My heart started racing as her footsteps approached my bedroom door. There was something different in her tone today, something sharper and more dangerous than her usual dismissive attitude. She burst into my room without knocking, her face flushed with rage, her perfectly styled blonde hair slightly disheveled. She stopped short when she saw me in the dress, and for a moment, her expression shifted from anger to something I couldn't quite identify. Was it shock, jealousy, recognition? "Well, well, well," she said slowly, circling me like a predator sizing up its prey. "Look what we have here. Little Chloe playing dress-up." "It's my prom dress," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I bought it myself." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Your prom dress? That's interesting, because I could have sworn I saw the exact same dress in a magazine spread about spring wedding guest attire. You know, the kind of dress someone might wear to upstage a bride at her own wedding." My stomach dropped. "Natalie, I would never—" "Wouldn't you?" She stepped closer, her eyes scanning every detail of the dress. "You've always been jealous of me, haven't you? Always trying to compete, always trying to steal my spotlight. And now, 3 months before my wedding, you conveniently choose a dress that's going to make you look better than me." "That's not true," I protested, but my voice came out smaller than I intended. "I saved for months for this dress. I've never even thought about your wedding colors or anything like that." Liar. The word hit me like a slap. "You know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to sabotage my special day, just like you've been trying to sabotage everything else in my life since we were kids." I stared at her in disbelief. This was beyond her usual cruelty. This was something else entirely, something that felt genuinely unhinged. "Natalie, you're being paranoid. It's just a prom dress. I'm not even going to be at your wedding ceremony. I'm working the catering station, remember?" "Oh, you'll be at my wedding, all right. You'll be there in your little emerald green attention-grabbing dress, making sure everyone looks at you instead of me. Making sure everyone wonders why the younger sister looks more elegant than the bride." Her words were getting more erratic, her breathing more shallow. I realized with growing horror that she wasn't just angry. She was spiraling into some kind of breakdown. The pressure of wedding planning, of maintaining her perfect image, of living up to everyone's expectations had finally cracked her composure. "I think you should leave my room," I said as calmly as I could manage. "We can talk about this later when you've calmed down." But instead of leaving, she moved toward my closet. "You know what? I don't think we need to talk about this at all. I think we need to solve this problem right now." Before I could react, she grabbed a pair of scissors from my desk drawer. The same scissors I used for school projects, for cutting out magazine clippings, for innocent teenage activities. In her hands, they looked like weapons. "Natalie, what are you doing?" My voice cracked with panic. "I'm solving our problem," she said with eerie calm. "If you don't have a dress, you can't upstage me. Simple logic." She lunged toward me, scissors raised. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet in the flowing skirt. The beautiful emerald fabric twisted around my legs as I fell, and I heard the sickening sound of tearing as my elbow hit the hardwood floor. "Please!" I gasped, scrambling to get away from her. Please don't do this. But her eyes had gone, cold, distant, like she was looking through me rather than at me. She grabbed a handful of the skirt fabric and raised the scissors. The first cut was deliberate, calculated. The sound of metal slicing through silk filled the room like a scream. Natalie, stop. I tried to roll away, but she followed me, cutting and tearing with methodical precision. This is insane. You're destroying something that has nothing to do with you. Everything has to do with me, she said through gritted teeth. This is my year, my wedding, my moment, and you are not going to ruin it with your pathetic attempt to be relevant. The scissors flashed again and again. Beautiful emerald silk fell to the floor in ribbons. Delicate beading scattered across the hardwood like tears. 8 months of saving, 8 months of dreaming, destroyed in less than 2 minutes. When she finally stopped, I was sitting in the middle of my bedroom floor surrounded by the remains of my prom dress. The bodice was completely separated from the skirt. The beading had been torn away in chunks. What was left looked like something pulled from a garbage disposal. Natalie stood over me, breathing hard, the scissors still clutched in her fist. For a moment, we just stared at each other in silence. Then slowly, a smile spread across her face. Not a happy smile, but something cold and satisfied. Problem solved, she said softly. I guess you won't be going to prom after all. She dropped the scissors on my desk and walked toward the door. Then she paused, turned back to look at the destruction one more time and laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, and Chloe? Next time you want to play princess, maybe make sure you're not living in someone else's castle. The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with the ruins of my dreams, scattered across the floor. I sat there for what felt like hours, picking up pieces of emerald silk, trying to see if anything could be salvaged. But it was hopeless. The dress was completely destroyed. That's when something inside me broke. Not just my heart, though that was certainly shattered. Something deeper, something fundamental about how I saw myself and my place in this family. I had spent 17 years accepting Natalie's cruelty as normal sibling rivalry. I had convinced myself that her constant put-downs and manipulations were just part of having an older sister. I had tolerated being treated like a servant in my own home because I thought it was temporary, that things would get better when I went to college. But this wasn't rivalry. This was something else entirely. This was calculated destruction, designed to break me down and keep me in my place. And as I sat there surrounded by the remnants of my prom dress, I realized something that would change everything. I was done being the victim. I carefully gathered every piece of torn fabric, every scattered bead, every thread of what had once been my beautiful dress. I photographed the damage from multiple angles, making sure to capture the deliberate nature of the cuts, the precision of the destruction. Then, I sealed everything in a plastic bag and hid it in the back of my closet. Natalie thought she had won. She thought she had successfully put me back in my place, reminded me that I was nothing more than a supporting character in her story. But what she didn't know was that I had been keeping records for months. Screenshots of her cruel text messages, recordings of her verbal abuse, documentation of every incident where she had gone out of her way to humiliate or hurt me. I had started collecting evidence initially just to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy, that her behavior really was as bad as it seemed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But now, looking at the destroyed dress, I realized I had something much more powerful than evidence. I had ammunition, and Natalie's perfect wedding was exactly 3 months away. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a clarity I had never experienced before. The torn pieces of my dress still lay hidden in the plastic bag, but something had shifted overnight. The devastating sadness had crystallized into something harder, more focused. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was determined. I spent the early hours researching everything I could about Natalie's upcoming wedding. I already knew the basics from living in the house, but now I approached it like a military strategist studying enemy territory. June 15th at Sunset Gardens Event Center. 150 guests. A rustic, elegant theme with white roses, eucalyptus garlands, and string lights. The photographer was Marcus Chen from Portland, costing $4,000. The dress was a custom creation from a boutique in Seattle, featuring hand-sewn pearls and French lace. The cake was a 3-tier vanilla lavender masterpiece from the most expensive bakery in the state. Every detail had been planned with obsessive precision. Natalie had spent the last year curating what she called the wedding of the century for Riverside, and our mother had enabled every extravagant demand. Nothing was too expensive, no detail too small to perfect. This wedding wasn't just an event. It was Natalie's coronation as the perfect daughter, the perfect bride, the perfect woman. But perfection, I was learning, had a lot of moving parts. And moving parts could be disrupted. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison asking how the dress fitting went. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back that there had been a small issue and I needed to find a new dress. I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth yet. The humiliation was still too fresh, too raw. School that Monday was torture. Everyone was talking about prom, showing off their dresses, discussing after-party plans. Tyler found me at my locker and immediately noticed something was wrong. "Hey, what's going on? You look like you haven't slept in days." I forced a smile that felt like wearing a mask. "Just stressed about final exams." He studied my face, with the kind of attention that made me fall for him in the first place. "This isn't about exams. Did something happen this weekend?" For a moment, I considered telling him everything. Tyler had always been supportive, always ready to listen without judgment. But the shame of what Natalie had done, the embarrassment of being so completely powerless in my own home, kept the words locked in my throat. "I'm fine," I lied, "just tired." He didn't believe me, but he also didn't push. That was Tyler, respectful of boundaries even when he was clearly concerned. "Well, if you need to talk about anything, you know I'm here, right?" I nodded and kissed his cheek, hating myself for shutting him out, but not knowing how to do anything else. The truth felt too complicated, too messy, too revealing of just how dysfunctional my family really was. The rest of the week passed in a blur of fake smiles and careful avoidance. I managed to dodge most conversations about prom by claiming I was still deciding on accessories. Madison offered to go dress shopping with me again, but I kept making excuses. How could I explain that I didn't have money for another dress? That my entire prom budget had been destroyed along with the emerald silk? At home, Natalie acted like nothing had happened. She breezed through the house in wedding planning mode, discussing flower arrangements with Mom, tasting cake samples, and trying on her dress for what seemed like the 100th time. She smiled at me during family dinners as if she hadn't committed, an act of pure psychological warfare less than a week ago. But I was watching her now with different eyes. I noticed how she dominated every conversation, how she dismissed Ashley's attempts to contribute ideas, how she treated our parents more like wedding vendors than family members. I observed the way she spoke to Kevin when she thought no one was listening, sharp, controlling, demanding. I started to wonder if anyone else could see what I was seeing, or if her public persona was so polished that everyone else was completely fooled. Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after the dress incident, Natalie made an announcement at dinner. "I've decided to have a bridal shower," she said, cutting into her chicken with precise movements. "Nothing too elaborate, just 30 or 40 of my closest friends and family members. Mom, I'll need you to handle the catering, obviously." Our mother beamed like she'd been given the greatest honor in the world. "Of course, sweetheart. When were you thinking?" This Saturday. I know it's short notice, but I've already talked to most of the important people, and they can make it work. I looked up from my plate. This Saturday? But that's prom night, Natalie finished with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I know. What a coincidence. The fork slipped from my hand and clattered against my plate. Everyone turned to look at me, and I felt heat rising up my neck. This wasn't a coincidence. This was deliberate. Natalie, our stepfather David said slowly, don't you think it might be better to schedule the shower for a different day? Chloe's been looking forward to prom. Oh, has she? Natalie's voice was honey-sweet with just enough venom underneath to make me flinch. Well, that's too bad, because family comes first. And since Chloe is part of the catering team, she'll need to be here to help serve. Mom nodded enthusiastically. That's right. This is a family business, and we all need to do our part. Chloe can go to prom next year if she wants. Next year? I found my voice, though it came out higher than usual. Mom, I'm a senior. There is no next year. Well then, I guess you should have thought about that before you chose to be part of this family's livelihood, Natalie said smoothly. The bridal shower is important for networking. Half of Riverside's social elite will be there, and they're all potential clients for the business. I stared at her across the table, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw the satisfaction in her eyes, the pure pleasure she was taking in dismantling another piece of my life. First my dress, now my entire prom experience. She was systematically destroying everything that mattered to me, and she was doing it with the full support of our parents. I already have a dress and everything planned, I said weakly, knowing it was a lie but hoping it might carry some weight. Do you? Natalie tilted her head with mock concern. Because I thought I heard you telling Madison that you were having dress problems. In fact, didn't you mention something about needing to find a new one? My blood turned to ice. She had been listening to my phone conversations. Or maybe Madison had mentioned it to someone who mentioned it to someone else. In a town like Riverside, gossip traveled faster than wildfire. I worked that out. I lied again. Well, that's wonderful for you, Natalie said, returning to her dinner as if the conversation was over. But the shower is still Saturday, and I still need you to work. Family obligations come before high school social events. David looked uncomfortable, and I could see him struggling with whether to intervene. But Mom was already deep in party planning mode, discussing menu options and decoration themes. Ashley kept her eyes on her plate, having learned long ago that speaking up during these family power struggles only made you a target. After dinner, I escaped to my room and finally called Madison. I need to tell you something, I said as soon as she picked up. And you're not going to believe it. I told her everything. The dress destruction, the bridal shower scheduling, the systematic way Natalie had been sabotaging my life. Madison listened in stunned silence, occasionally making small sounds of disbelief. Chloe, she said when I finished, that's not normal sibling rivalry. That's abuse. Hearing the word spoken out loud hit me like a physical blow. Abuse. I had never thought of it that way, had always minimized Natalie's behavior as jealousy or competition. But sitting there with my phone pressed to my ear, surrounded by the evidence of her cruelty, I couldn't deny it anymore. What are you going to do? Madison asked. I don't know, I admitted. I feel so powerless. Every time I try to stand up for myself, she finds a new way to tear me down. You could tell Tyler. You could tell your school counselor. I could what? Report my sister for being mean to me? Who's going to take that seriously? Madison was quiet for a moment. What if you just didn't work the shower? What if you went to prom anyway? I had considered it, but the logistics were impossible. She destroyed my dress, remember? And even if I could find something else to wear, my parents would literally kill me if I skipped a family business event. So find another dress, Madison said simply. and then figure out a way to make her pay for what she's done. After we hung up, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about revenge. Not the petty kind that involved putting salt in her coffee or hiding her. Makeup! Real revenge! The kind that would expose her for who she really was and make her face consequences for once in her privileged life. That's when I remembered the recording app I had downloaded months ago. I had originally installed it to record study sessions, but lately I had been using it during family conversations where I suspected Natalie might say something cruel. I had dozens of recordings saved on my phone, most of them capturing her casual cruelty in perfect digital clarity. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the files. Her voice filled my room, talking about how pathetic I was, how I would never amount to anything, how I was an embarrassment to the family. There were recordings of her mocking my appearance, my intelligence, my relationship with Tyler. There were conversations where she convinced our parents that I was lying about various things, manipulating them against me with expert precision. And then I found the recording from the day she destroyed my dress. I had forgotten that my phone was in my pocket during the entire incident, and the recording app had been running from an earlier conversation. The audio was crystal clear. Natalie's voice explaining exactly why she was destroying my dress, her laughter afterward, her cruel parting words. It was all there, preserved in digital perfection. For the first time in a week, I smiled. But audio recordings weren't enough. If I was going to expose Natalie, I needed something more dramatic, more public, more devastating. I needed to hit her where it would hurt the most, her reputation. I spent Friday researching social media strategies, viral marketing techniques, and public relations disasters. I learned about hashtag campaigns, viral videos, and the power of public shame in the digital age. Most importantly, I learned about timing. The key to destroying someone's reputation wasn't just having damaging information, it was releasing that information at exactly the right moment for maximum impact. And what moment could be more perfect than the height of her wedding celebration? Saturday morning arrived with the kind of spring sunshine that made everything look deceptively peaceful. I woke up early and spent an hour getting ready, not for prom, but for war. I did my hair carefully, applied makeup with more precision than I had ever used, and chose an outfit that would look professional on camera. Because today, I was going to need to look credible. The house was already buzzing with preparation for Natalie's bridal shower. Flowers were being arranged, caterers were setting up in the backyard, and Natalie herself was holding court in the living room while a makeup artist worked on her face. "Chloe," Mom called from the kitchen, "I need you to start setting up the dessert table." I walked into the kitchen and began arranging petit fours and macarons with careful precision. This was probably the last time I would ever work a Parker family event, and I wanted to do it perfectly. Not for them, but for my own sense of closure. As I worked, I listened to the conversations happening around me. Natalie was discussing her wedding dress with her maid of honor, describing every detail with the kind of obsessive focus that made my skin crawl. Her friends were asking about the honeymoon, the reception playlist, the flower arrangements. Everyone was treating her like visiting royalty, hanging on her every word as if she was dispensing wisdom instead of self-absorbed trivia. Tyler texted me around noon, asking if I was sure I couldn't make it to prom. I told him I was sick, which wasn't entirely a lie. I was sick of being treated like garbage, sick of watching Natalie get everything she wanted while I got nothing. Sick of being afraid to stand up for myself. The bridal shower officially started at 2 o'clock. I watched from the kitchen window as 35 women gathered in our backyard, all dressed in pastels and pearls, all there to celebrate the perfect bride. They played games, opened gifts, and took endless photos for social media. Natalie glowed in the center of it all, gracious and beautiful and completely in her element. I served drinks and cleared plates with mechanical efficiency, invisible to the guests but hyper-aware of every conversation. I heard them praising Natalie's dress selection, her wedding planning skills, her choice in husband. I watched her accept compliment after compliment with the perfect blend of modesty and confidence. And through it all, I waited. At 4 o'clock, when the party was at its peak and all the important photos had been taken, I made my move. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead went upstairs to my room and opened my laptop. It was time to tell my story. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as laughter drifted up from the backyard through my open window. The sound that had once made me feel excluded now fueled my determination. I opened a new document and began typing the words that would change everything. The first post was simple, almost understated. A single photo of the destroyed dress pieces laid out on my bedroom floor, captioned with just the date and time. I uploaded it to Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook simultaneously, using hashtags that I knew would reach beyond Riverside's small social circle. The second post was the audio recording from the dress destruction, paired with a black screen and white text explaining the context. My voice was steady as I added a brief narration explaining what listeners were hearing. But the third post was the masterpiece. A video I had spent hours editing, combining months of recorded conversations with photos and screenshots that told the complete story of systematic psychological abuse disguised as family dynamics. I had carefully blurred faces and changed names to avoid immediate legal issues, but anyone who knew our family would recognize the voices, the situations, the unmistakable patterns of manipulation and cruelty. The video began with a simple title card: "When Your Sister Destroys Your Dreams But Calls It Love." Then came the recordings, chronologically arranged to show escalation over time. Natalie mocking my appearance. Natalie convincing our parents I was lying about various incidents. Natalie describing me as an embarrassment to the family name. Each audio clip was paired with context, dates, and my own calm narration explaining what had led to these conversations. The climax was the dress destruction audio, but I didn't let it speak for itself. I provided background about the 8 months of saving, the part-time job, the excitement of finally feeling beautiful. I explained how the dress represented more than just prom. It represented hope, independence, the possibility of being seen as valuable. And then came Natalie's voice, crystal clear, explaining exactly why she was destroying something that meant so much to me. The video ended with photos of the destroyed dress and a simple message. This is what emotional abuse looks like when it hides behind family loyalty. This is what happens when someone decides you don't deserve to feel beautiful. This is my truth. I published the video at exactly 4:30, right as the bridal shower was hitting its social media peak. Then I sat back and waited. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, comments started pouring in. Not just from people I knew, but from strangers who had somehow found the video through the hashtags and sharing algorithms. The comments ranged from supportive to outraged to heartbroken. People shared their own stories of sibling abuse, family scapegoating, and psychological manipulation. The video was being shared faster than I could track. By 5 o'clock, I had over 1,000 views and 200 comments. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications from multiple platforms. People were not just watching. They were engaging, sharing their own experiences, and most importantly, they were angry on my behalf. That's when the real-time commenting started. People who lived in Riverside began recognizing details from the video. Someone identified Sunset Gardens Event Center from a background conversation about wedding venues. Another person mentioned recognizing the voice from Parker's premier catering events. The local connections were spreading through comment threads like wildfire. Around 5:30, someone posted a comment that made my heart race. Wait, isn't this the girl whose sister is getting married next month? I think I was just at her bridal shower. I refreshed the page obsessively, watching as more people made the connection. The video was no longer just an anonymous story about sibling abuse. It was becoming a local scandal with real names and faces attached. Someone had screenshotted photos from the bridal shower and was comparing them to details mentioned in my video. The digital detective work was happening faster than I had ever imagined possible. By 6 o'clock, the video had over 5,000 views and had been shared to multiple Riverside community Facebook pages. The comments section had become a forum for people who knew our family to share their own observations about Natalie's behavior over the years. A former classmate mentioned how Natalie had sabotaged another girl's homecoming nomination. Someone who had worked with her at a summer job described her treatment of younger employees. A pattern was emerging that went far beyond sibling rivalry, but the most damaging comments came from people who had witnessed incidents I had never even known about. A customer from our catering business described watching Natalie humiliate a teenage server at a wedding. A former friend talked about being dropped from Natalie's social circle after refusing to participate in gossip about me. Person after person shared stories that painted a picture of someone who had been carefully maintaining a public facade, while exercising cruelty whenever she thought no one important was watching. I was reading through the comments when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy, angry footsteps that could only belong to one person. I quickly closed my laptop and tried to look casual, but my heart was pounding so hard I was sure it could be heard from the hallway. Natalie burst through my door without knocking, her face flushed with rage and her carefully styled hair slightly disheveled. She was still wearing her bridal shower dress, but the serene bride act had completely disappeared. "What did you do?" she hissed, holding up her phone. "What the hell did you do?" I looked at her with what I hoped was genuine confusion. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me." She stepped closer, and I could see that her hands were shaking. "Someone just showed me a video with my voice, a video about our family." "I still don't know what you mean," I said calmly, though inside I was celebrating. If someone had already shown her the video, that meant it was spreading even faster than I had hoped. She grabbed my laptop and tried to open it, but I had password protected it. "Open this. Now." "No." The word came out stronger than I had intended. "You're not allowed to go through my personal things." "Personal things?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think destroying our family's reputation is personal? You think humiliating me in front of the entire town is just between us?" "I think," I said slowly, standing up to face her, "that you're paranoid. Maybe someone else got tired of watching you treat people badly." The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. My cheek burned, and I could taste blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth. But instead of cowering like I usually did, I smiled. "Did you just hit me, Natalie?" "You're damn right I did," she snarled. "And I'll do it again if you don't tell me what you posted online." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. "Say that again." Her eyes widened as she realized what I was doing. "You little—" "Go ahead," I said, holding the phone between us. "Hit me again. Threaten me again. Give me even more evidence of who you really are." For the first time in my life, I watched Natalie completely lose her composure. Her perfect mask slipped entirely, revealing something desperate and ugly underneath. "You have no idea what you've done," she whispered. "You have no idea what this will cost you." "Actually," I said, "I think I have a pretty good idea. But the question is, what's it going to cost you?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating. How much damage had been done? How many people had seen the video? How could she control the narrative? But for once, she didn't have answers. "This isn't over," she said finally. "You're right," I agreed. "It's just getting started." After she left, I opened my laptop again and saw that the video had reached 10,000 views. Comments were pouring in faster than I could read them, and shares were multiplying across platforms. Someone had created a hashtag, Justice for Chloe. Another person had started a GoFundMe to help me buy a new prom dress, which had already raised over $800 from complete strangers. But the most significant development was happening in the local community groups. Screenshots of the video were being shared alongside photos from the bridal shower, and people were putting together a timeline that made Natalie look increasingly calculating and cruel. Someone had dug up her old social media posts and found examples of her mocking other people's appearances and achievements. The perfect bride facade was crumbling in real time. Around 7 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Madison. "Chloe," she said as soon as I answered, "I just saw your video. Holy shit, girl. The whole town is talking about this." "Good or bad talking?" "Definitely good for you. Definitely bad for Natalie. People are pissed, like really pissed. Sarah's mom is saying she's going to cancel their catering order for her anniversary party. The Hendersons are talking about withdrawing their daughter from Natalie's old dance studio because they don't want to support anyone associated with her. This is bigger than just social media drama. This is affecting the family business." My stomach dropped. I hadn't considered how this might impact our parents' livelihood. "Oh God, Madison, I didn't think—" "Hey, no," she interrupted firmly. "Don't you dare feel guilty about this. You didn't create this situation. You just finally told the truth about it. And if the truth hurts their business, then maybe they should have thought about that before they let Natalie terrorize you for years." She was right, but it didn't make me feel less conflicted. Whatever else my parents were, they had worked hard to build their catering business. The thought of destroying their reputation along with Natalie's made me feel sick. "What's happening at your house right now?" Madison asked. "Nuclear war," I said honestly. "Natalie knows it was me and she's losing her mind. My parents don't know yet, but they will soon." "Do you want me to come over?" "No, it's not safe. I think things are going to get worse before they get better." After we hung up, I checked the video again. 15,000 views and climbing. The comment section had become a support group for people who had experienced similar abuse, but it had also attracted attention from local news outlets. Someone claiming to be a reporter from the Riverside Gazette had left their contact information, asking for an interview. That's when I realized the situation had moved beyond my control. What had started as a way to expose Natalie's behavior to our immediate community was becoming a regional story about family abuse and social media accountability. The video was being shared in Portland social groups, picked up by domestic violence, advocacy pages, and discussed in forums I had never heard of. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Chloe. This is Kevin. We need to talk." Kevin, Natalie's fiancé. I stared at the message for a long moment, trying to figure out how he had gotten my number and what he might want to discuss. Another message appeared. "I saw the video. There are things you need to know about what's been happening." Before I could respond, I heard voices downstairs. My parents had returned from cleaning up the bridal shower, and from the sound of it, Natalie was already filling them in on the situation. I could hear my mother's voice rising in pitch, my stepfather asking questions, and Natalie's explanations, getting more frantic and defensive. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. "She's trying to destroy our family," Natalie was saying. "She's lying about things that never happened, taking conversations out of context, making me look like a monster." "What exactly did she post?" my mother asked. "Recordings. Private family conversations that she had no right to record. And lies, Mom. So many lies mixed in with just enough truth to make people believe her." "Recordings of what?" My stepfather's voice was tighter than usual. There was a pause, and I could imagine Natalie scrambling for a way to explain without admitting what she had actually said. Just normal sibling stuff blown completely out of proportion. You know how dramatic Chloe can be. "Natalie," my mother said slowly, How many people have seen this video? Another pause. A lot. It's been shared all over town. People are canceling catering orders, Mom. The Petersons just called and said they're reconsidering our contract for their anniversary party. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear my parents calculating the financial damage, and I felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over me. Whatever my intentions had been, I was hurting innocent people along with the guilty ones. "Where is Chloe?" my stepfather asked finally. "In her room, probably making more videos," Natalie said bitterly. "Get her down here, now." I heard footsteps heading toward the stairs and quickly retreated to my room. A minute later, Ashley knocked on my door. "Mom and Dad want to see you." "Downstairs," she said quietly. "Chloe, what's going on? Everyone's acting crazy." I looked at my little sister with her concerned eyes and confused expression and felt another pang of regret. Ashley didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this family explosion. She had always been the peacekeeper, the one who tried to stay out of conflicts and keep everyone happy. "I told the truth about how Natalie treats me," I said simply. "And now, there are consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Before I could answer, my mother's voice echoed up the stairs. "Chloe, get down here right now." I walked downstairs feeling like I was heading to my own execution. My parents and Natalie were waiting in the living room, and the atmosphere was electric with tension. Natalie sat on the couch with her arms crossed and her face streaked with tears that I suspected were more strategic than genuine. My mother stood near the window with her phone in her hand, presumably reading comments or watching the video. My stepfather sat in his recliner with the expression he usually reserved for serious business problems. "Sit down," my mother said without looking. At me, I remained standing. "I'd rather not." "This is not a request," my stepfather said firmly. "Sit down. We need to talk about what you've done." "What I've done?" I felt my carefully maintained composure starting to crack. "What I've done is finally tell the truth about what it's like to live in this house." "You've told lies," Natalie interrupted. "Malicious lies designed to hurt me and destroy our family's reputation." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. "Which part was a lie, Natalie? The part where you destroyed my prom dress? The part where you called me an embarrassment? The part where you scheduled your bridal shower on prom night specifically to ruin my plans?" "You recorded private conversations without consent," my mother said. "That's illegal in some states." "It's not illegal in Oregon," I replied. "I checked, and even if it was, would that make what she said okay? Would that make what she did to my dress acceptable?" "What she did to your dress?" My stepfather looked confused. "What are you talking about?" I stared at him in disbelief. "You mean she didn't tell you? She didn't mention that she cut my prom dress into pieces with scissors?" "That's not what happened," Natalie said quickly. "She's exaggerating." "A minor incident? Minor incident?" I was shouting now, all pretense of calm gone. "You destroyed 8 months of saving. You cut up the one thing that made me feel beautiful. You did it deliberately and you laughed about it afterward." "Chloe, lower your voice," my mother warned. "No." The word came out louder than I intended. I'm done lowering my voice. I'm done making myself smaller so that everyone else can be comfortable. I'm done pretending that the way I'm treated in this house is normal. The silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced in our house. Even Ashley, who had been hovering in the doorway, seemed to be holding her breath. Finally, my stepfather spoke. "Show me the dress." "David," my mother started, but he held up a hand to stop her. "Show me the dress, Chloe. If what you're saying is true, show me the evidence." I ran upstairs and retrieved the plastic bag containing the destroyed dress pieces. When I returned to the living room and emptied the contents onto the coffee table, even Natalie seemed taken aback by the sight of the complete destruction laid out in the light. My stepfather picked up pieces of the emerald silk, examining the clean cuts, the deliberate nature of the damage. Jesus Christ, Natalie. What did you do? She was going to upstage me at my wedding, Natalie said, but her voice had lost its conviction. She bought that dress specifically to make me look bad. She bought a dress for her senior prom, my stepfather said slowly. A prom that you then made sure she couldn't attend by scheduling a family event on the same night. For the first time, I saw doubt creeping into my mother's expression. She was looking at the destroyed dress pieces, then at Natalie, then back at the evidence of what had clearly been a deliberate act of destruction. There's more, I said quietly. I opened my laptop and played the audio recording from the dress destruction incident. Natalie's voice filled the room, cold and calculating as she explained exactly why she was destroying my dress and how it would solve her problem. When the recording ended, the silence was absolute. Ashley had tears in her eyes. My stepfather was staring at Natalie like he had never seen her before. Even my mother seemed shaken by the evidence of her golden daughter's cruelty. You recorded that? My mother asked weakly. It was an accident, I said. But I'm glad it happened, because otherwise you never would have believed me. Natalie stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked by my own family. Kevin is picking me up in an hour, and I'm staying at his place until you all come to your senses. Maybe that's a good idea, my stepfather said quietly. Natalie stared at him in shock. Excuse me? Maybe you should stay somewhere else for a while, until we figure out how to handle this situation. Handle this situation? Natalie's voice was rising to a dangerous pitch. I'm the victim here. She's the one who publicly humiliated our entire family. She's the one who's destroying our business. She's the one, my stepfather said, standing up slowly, who finally told the truth about what's been happening in this house. And honestly, Natalie, I'm ashamed that it took a viral video for us to see it. The color drained from Natalie's face as my stepfather's words sank in. For 17 years, she had never faced real consequences for her actions, never been held accountable by the parents who worshipped her every achievement. The idea that they might actually side against her seemed to break something fundamental in her understanding of how the world worked. You can't be serious, she whispered. David, you've known me since I was 12 years old. You helped raise me. You know I'm not capable of the things she's accusing me of. I thought I knew you, he replied sadly. But the evidence is pretty clear, Natalie. The recordings don't lie. My mother had been silent through this exchange, staring at the destroyed dress pieces like they might rearrange themselves into something less damaging. Finally, she looked up at me with an expression I had never seen before. Something that might have been shame mixed with recognition. How long has this been going on? She asked quietly. Years, I said simply. Ever since she realized she could get away with it. Why didn't you tell us? The question hung in the air like an accusation, and I felt 17 years of frustration crystallize into a single, clear response. I tried. Every time I complained about her behavior, you told me I was being too sensitive. Every time I asked for help, you said it was normal sibling rivalry. Every time I showed you evidence of her cruelty, you found ways to excuse it or blame me instead. My mother flinched as if I had slapped her. That's not true, isn't it? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my recordings until I found one from 6 months ago. My mother's voice filled the room, telling me to stop being dramatic about Natalie's teasing and to learn to take a joke. Then another recording from last year, where she dismissed my complaints about Natalie sabotaging my science fair project as typical teenage competition. You have recordings of us too? My mother's voice was barely above a whisper. I have recordings of everything, I said. Every conversation where you chose to protect her instead of me. Every time you made me feel crazy for noticing her abuse. Every instance where you enabled her behavior by pretending it was normal. Ashley stepped fully into the room, her young face etched with confusion and hurt. Mom, is this all true? Has Natalie really been doing these things? My mother opened her mouth to answer, but Natalie cut her off. Don't listen to her, Ashley. She's manipulating all of you with edited recordings and fake tears. This is exactly what she's always done, playing the victim to get attention. Playing the victim? The words came out sharper than I intended. Natalie, there are videos of you mocking me at family gatherings. There are witnesses to your cruelty going back years. Multiple people in the comments are sharing their own stories about watching you humiliate me in public. This isn't manipulation. This is documentation. My phone buzzed with another text from Kevin. Please call me. There are things about Natalie that you need to know before her wedding. I showed the message to my stepfather, who read it with growing concern. Kevin wants to talk to me about Natalie. Should I call him? Absolutely not, Natalie said quickly. Kevin is just confused by all the lies you've been spreading. He'll see through this eventually. But her panic was obvious now, and it made me wonder what else Kevin might know. I stepped into the kitchen and dialed his number. Chloe, thank God, Kevin said as soon as he picked up. I've been trying to figure out how to approach this for weeks. Approach what? Natalie's behavior. The way she treats people when she thinks no one important is watching. I've seen her be cruel to waiters, to my younger sister, to anyone she considers beneath her. But watching your video made me realize it's not just random meanness. It's a pattern. My heart started racing. What do you mean? She's been lying to me about you for months, telling me you're jealous of our relationship, that you've been trying to sabotage our wedding plans, that you're mentally unstable and prone to making up stories for attention. She's been systematically turning me against you so that if you ever spoke up, I wouldn't believe you. I leaned against the kitchen counter feeling dizzy. Kevin, there's something you should know about the dress. I know about the dress, he interrupted. I was there. What? I came by to pick up some wedding planning documents that afternoon. I heard shouting from upstairs and went to check. If everything was okay. I saw her destroying your dress, Chloe. I saw the whole thing. The room seemed to spin around me. You saw it happen and you didn't stop her? I tried, he said quietly. I asked her what she was doing, told her she was going too far. But she convinced me that you had done something to provoke it, that the dress was somehow inappropriate for prom, that you were trying to upstage her wedding. She's very good at making her version of events sound reasonable. But you believed her? At the time, yes. She had already spent months telling me how difficult you were, how you couldn't be trusted, how you had a history of lying and manipulation. She had me completely convinced that you were the problem in the family. I closed my eyes, trying to process this information. Not only had Natalie destroyed my dress, but she had done it in front of her fiancé and convinced him it was justified. The level of manipulation was staggering. What changed your mind? I asked. Your video, he said simply. Hearing all those recordings played back to back, seeing the timeline of abuse you documented, it made me realize that I've been watching the same behavior for months and making excuses for it. She's been testing boundaries with me too, seeing how much cruelty I'll tolerate before I push back. Are you going to call off the wedding? There was a long pause. I don't know yet, but I needed you to know that someone else saw what happened to your dress. If you need a witness, if you need someone to corroborate your story, I'm willing to do that. When I returned to the living room, Natalie was in full damage control mode, her tears flowing freely as she begged our parents to see reason. She's destroying our family, she sobbed. Everything we've worked for, everything we've built, she's tearing it all down because she's jealous of my happiness. That was Kevin, I announced, and Natalie's tears stopped abruptly. He saw you destroy. My dress, Natalie. He was there. The silence that followed was deafening. Natalie's face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, calculation, and finally, desperate rage. He's lying, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. He's just trying to get out of our engagement because he's getting cold feet about the wedding. Is he? I asked. Because he seemed pretty clear about what he witnessed. My stepfather stood up slowly. Natalie, I think you need to leave. Tonight. You can't kick me out of my own house, she protested. This isn't your house anymore, he said firmly. This is a family home, and families don't treat each other the way you've been treating Chloe. You can come back when you're ready to take responsibility for your actions and make amends. Make amends? Natalie's voice rose to a shriek. For what? For being successful? For being beautiful? For having everything she's always wanted? I'm not apologizing for being better than her. The mask had finally slipped completely. Gone was the sweet, perfect daughter act. What stood before us now was someone consumed by jealousy and entitlement, someone who genuinely believed that cruelty was justified if it protected her position as the favorite. Ashley started crying quietly, and my mother moved to comfort her. Natalie, please, Mom said. Just calm down. We can work through this as a family. No, my stepfather said firmly. We can't work through this until she acknowledges what she's done. And based on what I'm hearing right now, that's not going to happen anytime soon. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications from the video, which had now reached over 30,000 views. The story was spreading beyond Riverside, being picked up by domestic violence advocacy groups and family psychology forums. Someone had created a compilation of all the audio recordings, and it was being shared as an educational resource about psychological abuse in families. But the local impact was what truly mattered. The Riverside Community Facebook page was filled with discussions about our family, with longtime residents sharing their own observations about Natalie's behavior over the years. Former classmates were posting stories about her treatment of other students. Customers of our catering business were sharing experiences of watching her mistreat employees. A pattern was emerging that painted a picture of someone who had been carefully maintaining different personas for different audiences while exercising cruelty whenever she thought she could get away with it. The financial impact was becoming clear, too. 3 more catering clients had called to cancel their orders, citing concerns about the family's values and treatment of employees. The dance studio where Natalie taught had asked her to take a temporary leave of absence while they assessed the situation. Even her bridal shower attendees were distancing themselves, with several posting on social media about being deceived by her public persona. Around 8 o'clock, a car pulled into our driveway. Through the window, I could see Kevin getting out of his truck, his face grim and determined. Natalie saw him too, and immediately began fixing her makeup and arranging her expression into something more sympathetic. "Kevin!" she called out as he entered the house. "Thank God you're here. They're all turning against me because of Chloe's lies." But Kevin walked past her without acknowledgement and approached my stepfather. "Mr. Parker, I think we need to have a conversation about what I witnessed here last week." For the next 20 minutes, Kevin described in detail what he had seen the afternoon Natalie destroyed my dress. His account was precise, factual, and devastating. He explained how he had tried to intervene, how Natalie had justified her actions, and how she had spent the following days convincing him that I had somehow deserved what happened. "I want to be clear," he said, looking directly at Natalie, "that I take full responsibility for not speaking up sooner. I let you convince me that your behavior was acceptable, and I enabled your abuse by staying silent. But I can't do that anymore." Natalie stared at him in shock. "Kevin, you can't believe her over me. We're getting married in 3 months. We're supposed to be a team." "Teams don't lie to each other," he replied quietly. "Teams don't manipulate each other into participating in cruelty. and teams definitely don't destroy innocent people's belongings out of jealousy. So, what are you saying? Natalie's voice was barely a whisper. Kevin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I'm saying that I can't marry someone who treats people this way. I'm saying that the person I thought I was in love with doesn't actually exist. He placed the engagement ring on the coffee table next to the pieces of my destroyed dress. The symbolism was perfect, one broken promise next to another, both representing Natalie's casual destruction of things that mattered to other people. You're breaking up with me? Natalie asked in disbelief. Over her? I'm breaking up with you over you, Kevin said firmly. Over the pattern of cruelty I've been ignoring. Over the lies you've told me about your sister. Over the person you actually are when you think no one important is watching. Natalie looked around the room desperately, seeking support that was no longer there. My stepfather was nodding in approval of Kevin's decision. My mother was still, processing everything she had learned. Ashley was staring at her older sister like she was seeing a stranger. And I was standing there with my phone in my hand, documenting everything for the record. This is all your fault, Natalie said, turning to me with pure hatred in her eyes. You've destroyed my life because you couldn't stand seeing me happy. I didn't destroy your life, I replied calmly. I just stopped protecting your reputation from the consequences of your choices. The truth of that statement seemed to hit her like a physical blow. For years, I had absorbed her abuse silently, protecting the family's image by refusing to fight back publicly. I had enabled her behavior by making myself a safe target, someone she could torment without social consequences. By finally speaking up, by finally sharing the truth with the world, I had simply stopped providing the cover that allowed her to maintain her perfect facade. Pack your things, my stepfather said quietly. You can stay with a friend tonight and we'll figure out longer-term arrangements tomorrow. As Natalie stormed upstairs to pack, Kevin approached me. Chloe, I owe you an apology. I should have spoken up when I saw what happened. I should have trusted my instincts instead of letting her manipulate me. Thank you for finally telling the truth, I said. That means more than you know. For what it's worth, he added, you deserved so much better than what she put you through, and you deserve a family that protects you instead of enabling your abuse. After Kevin left, my mother finally spoke up. Chloe, I owe you an apology too. I failed you as a parent. I was so focused on keeping peace in the house that I ignored clear signs of abuse. I chose the easy path of believing Natalie's explanations instead of investigating your complaints. Why? I asked. Why was it easier to believe that I was lying? My mother was quiet for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Because acknowledging that Natalie was capable of this kind of cruelty would have meant admitting that I had failed as a mother. It would have meant accepting that I had raised someone who could be this deliberately harmful to her own sister. It was easier to believe that you were being overly sensitive than to face the truth about what was happening in my own house. It wasn't a complete absolution, but it was honest acknowledgement of responsibility. For the first time in years, I felt like my mother was actually seeing me as a person deserving of protection rather than a problem to be managed. Natalie came downstairs an hour later with 2 suitcases and a defeated expression. She had called several friends looking for a place to stay, but word of the video had spread quickly through her social circle. Many of the people who had attended her bridal shower just hours earlier were now unwilling to associate with her publicly. I hope you're happy, she said to me as she reached the front door. You've gotten everything you wanted. Have I? I asked. Because what I wanted was to go to prom in a beautiful dress with my boyfriend. What I wanted was to feel supported by my family. What I wanted was to be treated with basic human dignity in my own home. None of those things required destroying. You, Natalie, they just required you to stop destroying me. She left without another word, and for the first time in months, our house felt peaceful. But the story was far from over. The video had now reached 50,000 views and was being covered by regional news outlets. The hashtag, #CharJusticeForChloe, was trending locally, and the GoFundMe for my prom dress had raised over $3,000. More importantly, dozens of people were sharing their own stories of psychological abuse, using my video as a catalyst to speak their own truths. The ripple effects were spreading far beyond what I had ever imagined when I first pressed publish. That afternoon, 3 days after Natalie left the house, the story hit the Portland Tribune. A journalist named Rachel Martinez had discovered my video through social media and reached out for an interview. I almost declined, worried about the attention. But Madison convinced me that sharing my story with a wider audience could help other people in similar situations. The interview took place at our kitchen table, the same place where so many family confrontations had occurred over the years. Rachel was kind but thorough, asking detailed questions about the timeline of abuse, the family dynamics that enabled it, and the decision to finally speak out publicly. She also interviewed my stepfather and mother, both of whom took full responsibility for their failure to protect me. We created an environment where Natalie felt entitled to treat her sister as less than human, my stepfather told the reporter. We prioritized family harmony over Chloe's well-being, and we failed in our most basic duty as parents. The article was published the following Wednesday with the headline, "When Family Becomes the Enemy. A teen's viral video exposes years of sibling abuse." It included excerpts from the audio recordings, photos of the destroyed dress, and statements from Kevin about what he had witnessed. But most importantly, it featured commentary from child psychologists about the long-term effects of psychological abuse within families. Dr. Sarah Chen, a family therapist quoted in the article, explained that sibling abuse is often overlooked because it's dismissed as normal rivalry. What we see in Chloe's case is a clear pattern of psychological torture designed to maintain a power imbalance within the family structure, she said. The victim is systematically isolated, gaslighted, and made to believe they deserve the treatment they're receiving. The article also highlighted the role that social media had played in validating my experience. Hundreds of people had shared similar stories in the comments, creating what one expert called a digital support group for survivors of family abuse. The viral nature of the video had given voice to people who had been suffering in silence, believing their experiences were isolated or normal. Within hours of the article's publication, my phone started ringing with interview requests from radio stations, podcasts, and even a few television programs. The story was being picked up by national outlets as an example of how social media could be used to expose hidden abuse and create accountability. But the most significant call came from Mrs. Thompson, my high school counselor. "Chloe," she said, "I need to apologize to you. You tried to talk to me about your home situation several times over the years, and I didn't take it seriously enough. I categorized it as typical sibling conflict, instead of recognizing the signs of abuse." Her admission was both validating and heartbreaking. How many adults had I tried to reach out to over the years? How many times had my cries for help been dismissed as teenage drama? The systemic failure to recognize psychological abuse within families was becoming clearer with each conversation. "There's something else," Mrs. Thompson continued. "Several other students have come forward since your story broke. They've shared experiences of abuse in their own homes that they had never felt safe discussing before. Your courage to speak out has created a space for other victims to find their voices." That weekend, something unexpected happened. Tyler showed up at my door with a garment bag and a nervous smile. "I know prom was ruined," he said, "but I was thinking maybe we could have our own celebration. Madison helped me coordinate with some of our friends, and we've planned something special." Inside the garment bag was the most beautiful dress I had ever seen. Not emerald green this time, but a deep sapphire blue that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon light. It was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated without being pretentious. It was perfect. "How did you afford this?" I asked, running my fingers over the silky fabric. "We didn't," Tyler grinned. "The GoFundMe for your prom dress raised over $5,000. People from all over the country contributed. There was enough money for the dress, shoes, hair, and makeup, and we're donating the rest to a domestic violence prevention program." That evening, I got ready for what Tyler called Chloe's real prom in the same bedroom where Natalie had destroyed my dreams just 2 weeks earlier. But this time, I wasn't getting ready alone. Madison was there to help with my makeup. Ashley was curling my hair, and even my mother was taking photos and offering encouragement. When I looked in the mirror, I saw something I had never seen before. Not just someone who looked beautiful, but someone who looked confident, strong, worthy of celebration. The girl staring back at me had survived years of psychological torture and emerged with her spirit intact. She had found her voice and used it to protect not just herself, but countless others who had been suffering in silence. The real prom was held at the Riverside Community Center, decorated by volunteers who had been moved by my story. About 30 of my classmates attended, along with several teachers who wanted to show their support. It wasn't the grand ballroom of the original prom, but it was filled with people who genuinely cared about me, and that made it infinitely more valuable. Tyler and I danced to 1,000 Years by Christina Perri, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a princess. Not because of the dress or the decorations, but because I was surrounded by people who saw my worth and celebrated my courage. During the slow dance, Tyler whispered in my ear, "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. What you did was brave." "It didn't feel brave," I admitted. "It felt desperate." "Sometimes those are the same thing," he replied. "Sometimes courage is just desperation with a plan." The local news station covered Chloe's real prom as a follow-up to the original story. The footage of me dancing in my blue dress, surrounded by genuine friends and supporters, became a powerful symbol of resilience and recovery. The contrast between this celebration and the destroyed prom dress from the original video created a narrative of triumph that resonated with viewers across the country. Meanwhile, Natalie's life was unraveling publicly. The dance studio had terminated her employment after several parents complained about her treatment of younger students. 3 more couples had canceled their wedding bookings with our families, catering business, citing concerns about being associated with the controversy. Most devastating of all, many of her longtime friends had distanced themselves as more stories emerged about her pattern of cruelty. She had been staying with her college roommate, but even that arrangement was becoming strained. According to Ashley, who maintained contact with her despite everything, Natalie was struggling to understand why her entire social network was collapsing. She seemed genuinely shocked that actions had consequences, that years of careful reputation management could be undone by a single moment of truth. 2 weeks after Chloe's real prom, Natalie called and asked to meet with me. She suggested a coffee shop in downtown Riverside, neutral territory where we could talk without family interference. I almost declined, but my therapist encouraged me to hear what she had to say. Dr. Williams was the psychologist I had started seeing after the video went viral. She specialized in family trauma and had been helping me process years of accumulated damage. "You don't owe her forgiveness," she had told me, "but you might find closure in hearing her perspective now that her power over you has been broken." Natalie looked different when I met her at the coffee shop. Her hair was less perfectly styled, her makeup more subtle, her clothing more casual. The armor of perfection she had always worn was gone, replaced by something that looked almost vulnerable. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began without preamble, "about how none of this had to happen if I had just treated you with basic human dignity." I waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. "I want you to know that I never thought of it as abuse," she continued. "I told myself it was just sibling rivalry, that I was toughening you up, that you were too sensitive and needed to learn to handle conflict better. But you knew it was hurting me, I said quietly. You could see that it was causing me pain. Yes, she admitted, looking down at her coffee cup. And I told myself that your pain didn't matter as much as my success. I convinced myself that there wasn't room for both of us to be happy, so one of us had to be sacrificed. It was the closest thing to acknowledgement I had ever received from her, but it wasn't enough. Natalie, you didn't just hurt me accidentally or out of ignorance. You systematically destroyed my self-esteem for years. You sabotaged my relationships, my achievements, my basic sense of worth. That wasn't rivalry. That was calculated cruelty. I know, she whispered. I know that now. Losing Kevin, losing my job, losing most of my friends. It's made me realize how much damage I was doing. Not just to you, but to myself. The person I became when I was hurting you wasn't someone I'm proud of. So, what do you want from me? I asked. I want to apologize, she said, finally meeting my eyes. Not the kind of apology that's designed to make you forgive me or take me back, but a real acknowledgement of what I did and how it affected you. You deserve to feel safe in your own home. You deserve to have parents who protected you. You deserve to have a sister who celebrated your successes instead of sabotaging them. I sat quietly for a moment, processing her words. They were the right words, spoken with what seemed like genuine remorse, but they couldn't undo 17 years of damage, couldn't restore the confidence she had systematically destroyed, couldn't give me back the prom dress or the countless other things she had taken from me. I appreciate the apology, I said finally. But I need you to understand that this doesn't fix anything between us. I can't have you in my life anymore, Natalie. The damage is too extensive. The trust is too broken. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I take full responsibility for what I did. And I wanted you to know that seeing the impact of your video, reading all those comments from other people who experienced similar abuse, it's made me realize that what happened in our house wasn't normal. It was never normal. What are you going to do now? I asked. I'm starting therapy, she said. I'm trying to understand how I became someone capable of treating another person the way I treated you. And I'm working on making amends to other people I've hurt over the years. As I walked home from that coffee shop, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not because Natalie had apologized, but because I had been able to hear her apology without feeling obligated to forgive her or resume a relationship with her. The video had given me more than just public validation. It had given me the power to set my own terms for how I wanted to be treated. The ripple effects of my story continued to spread in ways I never could have anticipated. A documentary filmmaker reached out about including my case in a film about family abuse. A publishing house asked if I would consider writing a book about my experience. Most meaningfully, a nonprofit organization invited me to speak at their annual conference about domestic violence prevention. But the most profound change was happening within my own family. My parents had started family therapy to address the systemic problems that had allowed Natalie's abuse to continue unchecked. They were learning about emotional neglect, scapegoating, and the ways that seemingly well-intentioned parents can enable abuse by prioritizing family harmony over individual well-being. We failed you in fundamental ways, my mother said during one of our therapy sessions. We taught Natalie that her feelings and comfort were more important than your basic human dignity. We created a hierarchy in our home where you were expendable. My stepfather was equally direct in taking responsibility. I was so focused on avoiding conflict that I became complicit in your abuse. Every time I chose not to intervene when Natalie was cruel to you, I was sending the message that her behavior was acceptable. Ashley, meanwhile, was processing her own trauma from growing up in a household where psychological abuse was normalized. She had learned to make herself invisible during conflicts, to never rock the boat, to accept unacceptable behavior as normal family dynamics. At 14, she was already showing signs of anxiety and hypervigilance that our therapist recognized as symptoms of growing up in an abusive environment. 3 months after the video was published, I received a message that stopped me in my tracks. It was from a girl named Emma who lived in Ohio, and her story was eerily similar to mine. Her older brother had been systematically abusing her for years while their parents dismissed it as sibling rivalry. She had been planning to endure the abuse until she graduated and moved away for college, but watching my video had given her the courage to speak up. "I recorded my brother threatening me," she wrote, "and I showed the recording to my parents. For the first time in my life, they believed me. He's in therapy now, and our family is finally getting help. Thank you for showing me that I didn't have to suffer in silence." Emma's message was followed by dozens of others. People from across the country were sharing their own stories of family abuse, many of them crediting my video with giving them the courage to seek help. What had started as a desperate attempt to expose one person's cruelty had become a catalyst for countless other survivors to find their voices. The video eventually reached over 2 million views and was featured in psychology textbooks as an example of how social media could be used to expose hidden abuse. More importantly, it had helped create what researchers called a cultural shift in how we understand sibling relationships. The narrative that all sibling conflict was normal and harmless was being challenged by survivors who were finally willing to share their truth. As I prepared for my high school graduation, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. I was no longer the quiet girl who absorbed abuse in silence. I was someone who had found her voice and used it to protect not just herself, but countless others. I was heading to college in the fall with a full scholarship funded by donations from people who had been moved by my story. Most importantly, I was finally free from the toxic family dynamics that had controlled my life for 17 years. Natalie did not attend my graduation, and I was grateful for that small mercy. The day belonged to me and my achievements, not to the complicated legacy of our relationship. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I thought about the girl who had sat in her bedroom surrounded by the pieces of her destroyed prom dress just a few months earlier. She had felt powerless and alone, convinced that she would never escape the cycle of abuse that had defined her childhood. But that girl had been wrong about one thing. She wasn't powerless. She just hadn't learned how to use her power yet. And when she finally did, she changed not only her own life, but the lives of countless others who had been waiting for someone to show them that speaking truth was possible, that consequences could exist even for golden children, and that families could heal when they finally stopped protecting the abuser and started protecting the victim. The destroyed prom dress was still in my closet, carefully preserved in its plastic bag. Not as evidence anymore, but as a reminder of what I had survived and how far I had come. Sometimes courage looked like speaking up in the moment. Sometimes it looked like gathering evidence for months before finding the strength to share it. And sometimes it looked like a teenage girl with a smartphone and a story, changing the world one viral video at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.